You probably remember back to when EA and BioWare were first marketing Mass Effect Andromeda and telling us all the things we were in store for in the new game. There was one word that BioWare devs kept using during that time that made me start to worry: bigger. Everything was going to be bigger. At one point, BioWare said that one of their multiple explorable story worlds would be the size of Dragon Age Inquisition as a whole. As someone who poured 120 hours into Inquisition and enjoyed it very much, that should have excited me, but it just set off alarm bells in my head and made me wonder, what exactly is in all this extra space? It turns out the answer to that question is not heaps. If you want to get an idea of what I mean, you can subscribe to us on YouTube and check out the Mass Effect Andromeda content we have there. But for now, let me tell you where I'm going with all this. I can't help but feel like Mass Effect Andromeda is unfinished. The sci-fi RPG elements are still there, but it feels like many of the things that made the series special have been gutted. The engaging dialogue from colourful, exciting, and sometimes tragic characters is rare at best. You can no longer kit out your companions, and their leveling options are severely limited, which made me feel even more apathetic toward them. And the things BioWare has expanded on, like crafting and large-scale world exploration, feel tedious. It's such a big step back, not just for Mass Effect, but for BioWare, and while playing Andromeda, I can't help but wonder how this happened. Personally, I blame that word bigger. Now, I understand that when a lot of you guys hear bigger, you hear more bang for your buck, and I get that. If you're paying for a full-priced game, 60 hours of gameplay sounds better than 20. But personally, I'll always take quality over quantity. If a game is already great at 10 hours, I wouldn't want a developer to potentially make it mediocre by drawing it out to 20 for the sake of more playtime. For example, if games like Journey, Firewatch, or Portal were drawn out unnecessarily, they may not have had the same impact. Andromeda includes huge sections of chasing objective markers and talking to uninteresting NPCs. It means there's a lot of extra hours of game in there, sure, but it feels like unsatisfying padding that doesn't contribute much to the tenets of what make Mass Effect games so good. Meeting fascinating people and feeling like a hero. I don't know about you, but I don't feel particularly heroic trying to make my way to yet another waypoint to deliver random assorted supplies while switching the Nomad between regular mode and lumbering slight hill climbing mode for 10 minutes apiece. Of course, these sorts of missions are optional, but in Andromeda you can never tell if a mission's going to be worthwhile until you're actually doing it. Sometimes side quests that seem trivial at first end up revealing really cool content, but even more often side missions with interesting story justifications still devolve into boring fetch quest gameplay once you get started. I felt the same way about No Man's Sky when that neared release. I mean, their whole shtick was you'd have 18 quintillion planets to explore, which is great, but it led me to thinking, alright, what's on them? Size and scope mean nothing if you don't have a compelling reason for said size. Big for the sake of big is, well, exactly the problem with Andromeda. That's not to say big can't be done well. Games like The Witcher 3 and Skyrim are great examples of worlds that feel full and vibrant while being pretty damn massive. I loved seeing the terrain change under my feet while traversing Tamriel, and in both games you often stumble upon intriguing characters and side quests that make it well worth exploring the sprawling game world. The problem with bigger isn't just empty spaces in between points of interest either, it's also the features that get sidelined during development in the pursuit of making everything else more expansive. Mass Effect Andromeda's animation issues are a perfect example. If we take the word of ex-BioWare animator Jonathan Cooper, it sounds like BioWare had likely intended to code every facial animation individually. But with 1,200 plus speaking characters, the sheer size of that task meant it didn't happen. If Cooper's right, the bulk of the work was left up to automated algorithms, and the end result is, well, this. Fortunately a little better now that there's been a patch, but you can still see the effects. Back in November of last year, EA said it would happily delay Mass Effect Andromeda for a second time if it felt the game needed more time to be improved. It was originally delayed from 2016 until the first quarter of this year, and as you probably noticed, it did indeed come out after just one delay. So EA must have decided they were happy enough with the final product to not push the release date back again. I don't think Andromeda is a bad game. There are some great character moments, there's that sense of wonder when you're landing on a new planet, and I personally really enjoyed establishing settlements. It just feels hollow. Some missions wrap up with an unceremonious email in your inbox. Rooms are mostly filled with characters who don't speak, and while you can now ask the 1200 odd speaking characters more questions than you could in any previous BioWare game, I found myself unwilling to broach further conversation because the NPCs weren't interesting enough that I wanted to know more about them. I mean, I asked anyway because I'm a completionist, but honestly, I don't really care about Joe Schmo's reasons for coming to Andromeda when I know I'll never speak to him again. I'm sure I'll keep playing Andromeda in the hopes that it improves and because of my love for the original Mass Effect trilogy, but it is hard not to think about what the game could have been. The combat system improvements demonstrate that the current BioWare team can deliver something better for the Mass Effect formula, but I wish it had gone further than just improved combat. To be fair, a few of my friends have told me that Mass Effect Andromeda totally kicks into gear at the 40-50 hour mark. So make of that what you will. All that's just my opinion though, so let me know where you land on Andromeda, and if there are any games that you think do big really well, or not so well. I'll catch you again next time.